Continuing on from my Mass Effect review and leading to the eventual coverage of the whole series, Mass Effect 2. I feel like I covered all the main background stuff in my Mass Effect 1 review, but I'll talk about some of the specific things that went into developing this game. BioWare were primarily focused on streamlining the third-person shooter aspects of the game rather than preserving the RPG elements from the previous iteration. They wanted the gameplay to be more focused on real-time decision-making over the classic pause the game and tactically make decisions. Pretty much, the only real criticisms on Mass Effect 1 were things that were just unintuitive or clunky, like the inventory, so BioWare said they were determined to iron out those small annoyances. Did they manage it? I criticized Mass Effect 1 for its general clunkiness, and I didn't even mention the sprinting. Ugh. So did they iron out the kinks? Stick around and find out. Yuck. I'll be honest, I considered not even including this section in the review. The game runs perfectly, I had literally no performance issues. I feel I should add a disclaimer and say that you aren't guaranteed to have no performance issues just because I didn't have any, but if you have a decent PC, you will probably be fine. That's it, I guess. On to visuals and design. In terms of the visuals, I mentioned in my Mass Effect 1 review that I felt the visuals were not only really bland, but there was a weird mix between cartoonish characters and the uncanny valley. That strange mixture in the character design is still there, but the visuals are a lot better. The facial lighting has been improved, so the characters no longer look like they've always have a lamp being shined on their face. There's also lots of other little additions like depth of field that really go a long way to making the game look pretty good. Maybe it's just me, but I also feel like the game is much more colorful and bright. Everything in the first game looked really washed out, which really solidified how boring the visuals were. Huge improvement in this game. Still not perfect, but the visuals have graduated from poor to average to good in this game. Though, the animations are still horrendous. I want to say that they are a bit better than Mass Effect 1, but I wonder if it's actually just that they've been smarter about not putting characters in places that they would need to be animated in a different way than they normally would. God damn it, BioWare, get your shit together when it comes to animations. The UI design is great. They have an entirely different PC-friendly UI compared to the console version, and the inventory is a lot better than it used to be. I feel like some people might not agree with me, because the inventory is actually just pretty much gone. Instead of improving it, they kind of opted for removing it from the game entirely, and that might piss off people who really like the RPG elements of the first game in terms of equipment. Oh man, the level design. Right, so, in my review for the first game, I didn't really mention this. Even if you disregard the fact that the same environments were rehashed for side quests, the main story environments were not very good for being tactical. It all felt kinda slapped together. That's fixed here for everything, both in the main story and the side quests. The level design has been streamlined, and I use that word in a positive sense, to be more like other third-person cover shooters. You can actually do stuff like flank the enemy, and the positioning of your squad is actually important. All thanks to the level design. I've beaten you over the head with it, but BioWare wanted this game to be closer to a common third-person shooter compared to the first game. My theory is that since they had partnered up with EA at this point, that it was actually EA who wanted this, because EA is pretty known for avoiding risks. Regardless, I think it was a great decision for the series. The combat is more responsive, you can actually aim now, and I already mentioned that the level design really complements the overhauled mechanics. Related to the level design, there actually is a need to switch weapons in this one. In Mass Effect 1, you never ran out of ammo, plus because of the makeup of the levels, there was no real need to bother using anything long range like a sniper rifle. Pistol or shotgun was fine for the whole game pretty much. Since ammo can run out pretty quick in this game, you're always forced into trying new tactics and making use of your full arsenal. There are times as well when an assault rifle or SMG just won't go the distance and you need to switch to a pistol or a sniper rifle. The powers are a lot better in almost every way. The cooldowns have been reduced severely, and you only have one cooldown meter to worry about. It's hard to describe without playing the game, but this lends itself to more frequent use of powers, and it helps that the powers are actually useful, and if playing on normal or higher are absolutely required. For me though, and I considered putting this in the visuals and design section, the way the powers look and feel may be the most important thing that they changed. I think people underestimate sound design and visual flair, treating them as icing on top of the cake, when in reality I would say they're the eggs or the flour. In Mass Effect 1, your powers would just sort of make a splody noise and fizzle out. In this game, you activate your power and stuff flies out of your arm and smacks the enemy with this bassy thud that is immensely satisfying, along with this similarly bassy electrical shorting noise when an enemy's shields are destroyed. There's so much of this stuff that they added to the game, which really makes it fun and satisfying to play. All of these little things add up to make something amazing. So I loved the combat in Mass Effect 2, which is a far cry from Mass Effect 1. That said, there was once or twice little things would bug me. For example, here I had a lot of trouble with this cover, and I had similar issues getting into and out of cover sometimes throughout the game. Overall though, the positives vastly outweigh the negatives. In Mass Effect 1, and I've mentioned Mass Effect 1 1,000 times in this review because it's the most obvious point of comparison, I felt like the actual plot was relatively thin, and its real advantage was its world and, to some degree, the characters. Mass Effect 2 does pretty much everything really well. The main plot is interesting. While it does have the save the world stink, it still manages to not be predictable. There's mystery, there's twists, there's a very satisfying ending, and it does all this while doing choice and consequence better than any other game I've played. Everything you do in the game impacts, specifically, the end of the game and how it pans out. Now, I'm not someone who likes to give plot synopsises because I don't feel they actually serve a purpose in a review. I don't see why the reviewer is obligated to spoil the first 30 minutes of exposition, and I'm not going to do that here, but I do feel this particular point is relevant. The thing that makes the choice aspect of the game work is that 95% of the game is preparation and build-up. Your goal is to assemble a large crew of highly skilled individuals that will be able to pull off the impossible. So all of the choices you make determine how the 2-hour-long final mission pans out, and it can go a lot of different ways. It's incredibly satisfying when choices you make earlier in the game pay off and end up saving someone's life or something. And in terms of the actual story, this build-up serves it really well. As you play, you slowly learn more about your mission and the enemy you're facing, and the gravity of what you're trying to pull off is bashed into your skull so much that you feel nervous before initiating the final mission. It's pretty masterful storytelling. And that's backed up by the fact that the characters in Mass Effect 2 are so likable and diverse, and you have such a big squad. There's so many characters in this game, and they all have their own lengthy side missions to go with them that develop their character. There are a few bad eggs here and there, but overall the characters are great.
I'm on a critical mission and I need your help.
Mission? What mission? No. Too busy. Clinic understaffed. Plague spreading too fast. Who sent you?
It's a covert and privately funded human group.
Related to plague. Doesn't affect humans. Human-centric interest. Few human groups would know me. Equipment suggests military origin. Not Alliance standard. Spectres. Not human. Terra firma too unstable. Only one option. Cerberus sent you. Unexpected.
And all of this without mentioning how great the world is. I talked about it in the last review, but because of story reasons, you can visit a lot of places you couldn't in the last game, which gives you a chance to meet some races that you can never meet before, furthering developing the world and lore. I could talk about this for hours, so I'll conclude by saying that, for me, the story is the true highlight of this game. You might notice a trend in my last two reviews, last week's being Dark Souls. Mass Effect 2 is one of my favorite games of all time, and surpasses Arkham Knight, though not by too much. I don't really need to explain why it's lower than Dark Souls, but Dark Souls is my favorite game ever so far, so Mass Effect 2 has to go below it. I think Mass Effect 2, and spoilers for my Mass Effect 3 review, I guess, is the best Mass Effect by a relatively large margin. The build-up, the story, and the ending just creates the perfect storm for a game, and I would say that it has the best traditional story of any game I've ever played. If you haven't played Mass Effect 2, play it. That's my recommendation. That's as far as it goes. Even if you've not played Mass Effect 1, in the ideal world, you should play Mass Effect 1 before you play Mass Effect 2, but it's by no means required. You might find your experiences augmented a bit because you have some experience with the characters and the world, plus you can carry over your choices from the first game, and that's pretty valuable. But if you look at Mass Effect 1 and you think, that looks awful, I don't blame you. And I say, skip to Mass Effect 2, fuck Mass Effect 1. If you like Mass Effect 2 enough, you can always go back and do another playthrough of Mass Effect 2 augmented with choices that you made in the last game. So a couple of things I didn't mention because they didn't really fit anywhere in my script. Space exploration is extremely boring. You just fly around planets and scan them, it's the worst. And the music is, like a lot of things in Mass Effect 2, some of the best of any game. I've showcased the soundtrack throughout this review, and I don't know how anybody couldn't adore it. I think that's all I need to say. Alright, see ya!